Welcome back to the Alts Podcast. I'm your host, Horacio Ruiz. We bring you industry leaders and creators to give their insights on the rapidly changing and exciting world of alternative assets. Opinions expressed on this podcast by the host and podcast guests are for informational purposes only and should not be considered investment advice. Podcast hosts and guests may maintain positions in the offerings discussed in this podcast. Thank you for joining me on the podcast. In this episode, we talk to Trung Pham, the CEO and founder of RYSE. Trung is looking to reach an untapped market by retrofitting window shades with a simple motor to convert them into automated shades. In this episode, Trung talks about how he came up with the idea to develop the motor that can be attached to a window frame and automatically rotate shades. He also talks about the market potential, working with commercial buildings, and how RYSE is raising money from accredited and retail investors worldwide. I hope you enjoy my conversation with Trung. All right, guys, it's great to be back on the podcast. We have a really cool company CEO today, RYSE. We're with the CEO, Trung Pham. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we saw RYSE and the products that you guys have, and it's really cool. It kind of fits into that whole smart home ecosystem. But Trung, what I don't like to speak so much for the guests. I kind of want you to introduce yourself, talk about RYSE, and kind of how you kind of came upon this idea.
Yeah, for sure. So the company was started back in 2015 with the idea itself. And it was really much a personal problem that I faced, where I moved into a condo apartment and was spending a lot of money on new furniture, new TV, new bed, things like that. I didn't have the budget for automated shades, even though I wanted it. It's one of those luxury goods that I thought it was really cool. So I went to Home Depot, got a quote, and found out that it was extremely expensive, over $1,000 per window. I think it was closer to $1,500 per window. Wow. And I had these giant floor-to-ceiling windows, about 4 of them. So would have cost me well over $6,000. Didn't have the budget for that. So I opted in for regular manual shades, the one with the beaded chains. Had those installed for about $300 a pop. And then when the summer came around, 6 months later, I went back to the same Home Depot and I talked to the same designer. I'm like, hey, listen, I bought these shades from you a couple months ago. It's getting super hot. I want to motorize them and automate them so I could control the temperature. And that's when I learned that once you have manual shades installed, you can never motorize them. So they actually told me I had to replace them with brand new motorized shades. And I told them that's silly. Like, just give me a motor. I could DIY it myself and just, it would act like a pulley system to automate it. Turns out that product doesn't exist. They told me it didn't exist. I went home, Googled it. Sure enough, it didn't exist. And that was kind of like the eureka moment. And myself, I have a finance background, so I really took this approach as a business. Is there enough demand? Who are the competitors in the space? How much money are they making? Can we target this really niche group of existing window shades? And how big is that opportunity? And what I learned was that only 5% of window shades, about 5%, are ever motorized and automated. And the main reasons are the same factors I mentioned. One is too expensive, and 2, there's no retrofits. So if we were able to create a very cost conscious product that targeted the other 95% of window coverings, that would be a massive market for us. So that's kind of the eureka moment. That's how I came up with the idea.
So this idea, so you say that there already is a market for automated shades, but you mentioned the cost was prohibitive, right? So then your idea was, just give me a motor. It seems like you already had the product in mind for what you wanted, and you kind of thought, hey, it should already be out there. It must already be out there, but there's nothing there to retrofit, regular shades. So can you talk specifically about what it is that you kind of that you have? What do you mean by the motor? How does this motor work, and how do you retrofit it to existing shades?
Yeah, for sure. So it's really pretty much a motor encased in its own housing. You mount it on the window frame, and you loop the chain or cord through the sprocket. And if you give me a moment, I'll just actually get the device right here, and you'll see what I mean. But this is what the device looks like. Very simple. And as you can see there, you just basically loop the chain or cord through the device, mount it on the window frame, and that's it. You have automated shades that way. So it's mounted on the window frame, very small device. It's white. It blends in with 99% of the window frames that are white as well. So hardly notice it. Beautiful device. And that's all you do. It really takes a couple of minutes to install on our bracket on the window frame. and you use our mobile app to set it up. So with the mobile app, you could control it with our app. You could set routines and schedules. So things like 7 a.m. open, 8 p.m. close. And then if you buy our bridge, you can connect it to Google Home, Amazon Alexa, or Apple HomeKits for voice control.
So when you did the research, right? Because this is kind of what I'm curious. So what it works is with window shades with beaded chains, right? And you mentioned you had a finance background, but even still, like I'm wondering, like what did you see what inspired you to be like, I'm gonna work on this now, and whatever you were doing before that, like, had you started other products before? Had you always kind of been interested in kind of messing with things? Like, how did you then say, I have a need, and you know what, I'm gonna not just kind of like search for it, but I'm going to create this on my own.
So I focused on building the company and building the team rather than building the product, even though I had outlined specific product requirements of what the product should do and whatnot, like things like a product manager would do. And I think every early CEO is like a product manager. But at the end of the day, it was one of those opportunities I saw where there's a big market, an unfulfilled need. And at this time, the smart home space was taking off, Nest, Alexa, all those platforms were being launched and whatnot. So it was a hot market at the time. And I just thought, you know what, this is too big of an opportunity to ignore. Yes. And I just really wanted it for myself first and foremost. Right. So when I saw the opportunity, I'm like, you know what, I think we could build a company out of this. And if you look at the competitors and the comps in this space, man, some of these companies are generating billions of dollars in revenue, and they only sell to that 5% of the market.
Yeah. Amazing. Moving on with the product, right? Like you mentioned that you can program the motor. You download the app. There's an app that you download for the SmartShades. What does that app do? Like, what can you do exactly? Take me through the different rooms that you can control. Can you control how far down they go, at what time they go, and how many different ways can you use the mounted motor?
So yes, the motor itself is super simple to install. It works with anything with a beaded chain. So the window shades or roller shades, silhouettes, a lot of Roman shades that have beaded chains, even vertical blinds that go side to side. Many of those have beaded chains as well. But as you inquired, the most common feature is just scheduling. So a lot of users just want to be able to use our app to set routines where they say, hey, 7 a.m. open, 8 p.m. close, wake up to natural sunlight, at night give me extra privacy. So those are the main features we use. Voice control is obviously another great feature where you could just, come home and say, hey, Alexa, open my shades, and your shades just magically open. So those are the primary use cases we see for our technology. Now, obviously, you can do cool things like automate it based on weather conditions. So if you integrate with sensors, then if it gets too hot, shades automatically lower, reduces your intercooling loads, and then reduces energy consumption. And that's something interesting enough we're doing in the commercial space, where if we have large building deployments, thousands of windows, we're able to determine the amount of solar heat gain and basically automate the shades to reduce that heat gain and thereby reduce indoor cooling. It's pretty much a big issue in all glass commercial buildings, where all that sunlight's just blistering in, and it's really causing the HVAC to overcool a space, particularly during evenings or weekends when no one's in the office. So if you have all your shades open in an all glass building and no one's in the office on the weekends, it's just cooling an empty space, and that's wasted energy. So one of the simple things you do is just lower the shades. Very simple, and it saves significant amount of energy.
Wow, you can program that. What does it take to program a commercial building like that? Let's say a skyscraper with thousands of windows. Is that something that you're kind of targeting as well? Because what I was thinking about you targeting like homes, households, but then you open up the commercial space and you're opening up a whole nother market there.
Yeah. So historically we've been targeting the residential space, but when we launched, we got a lot of interest from commercial buildings. And there's a lot of unique things you can do, but most buildings have like a building automation system, like a central brain, and we would just respond to their commands. So if they say, just like scheduling, they could schedule evenings, weekends, closing it, or they could tie it into their sensors. And if their sensors detect a certain amount of light or heat gain or temperature, they can lower the shades. So it's really up to the building and the building automation system on how they want to control their shades.
That's awesome. So we talked about, I think there's 3 aspects to the product. Correct me if I'm wrong. You got the motor, you got the app, and then you mentioned this before, the SmartBridge.
Yeah.
And the SmartBridge, you described it as like the brains behind the shade system, right?
Yeah.
And so basically, so 2 things here. You can have the motor without the SmartBridge, right? but the SmartBridge is really what kind of allows you to do a lot more of the automation, where you can talk to Alexa or Google Home, and really integrate it into a smart home ecosystem. Is that correct? Like how is a SmartBridge add on to the motor?
Yeah, so the SmartBridge connects to your router via Ethernet.
Okay.
And that gives you Wi-Fi access, right? That gives you cloud control. So you'll be able to control your shades if you're not at home as well, things like that. But once you get cloud control, then we do an API integration with Google Home, Amazon Alexa, and Apple HomeKit. So very simple integrations, very simple product in that case. But yeah, that's generally what we do in order to create these automations. The bridge also allows you to connect up to 10 devices to one bridge and allow you to control all the shades at once. So you could basically create groups. You could do like a kitchen, a living room, bedroom, and control different groups within the home, or control all the shades at once.
Wow. Okay. And can you even customize each room? So say like during one part of the day, the living room, right, gets the most sun, and then that's what you're going to have coming down, and then later on, you could do the opposite, I guess, on the other end of the house, maybe. That's kind of what I'm thinking. Okay.
Definitely.
So special like that. And I guess what I'm thinking about is in that sense, right? This whole smart system, right? So the product seems so simple, right? Kind of, hey, we're working on a shading system. There's obviously a lot more behind that. How do you integrate that into like an entire home ecosystem, right? When you're talking about applying that to like locking your doors, when to turn down the lights or turn on the lights, is it kind of like a separate app, or can you kind of seamlessly integrate that? Is that something maybe you're working on to improve?
Yeah. So interestingly enough, yes, we are developing a Z-Wave based model, and that will allow us to integrate with other third-party hubs and platforms in the marketplace that have their own app. But today, you could just use your Google Home, Amazon Alexa, or Apple HomeKit. Apple HomeKit is probably one of the most high-demand centralized app. So you don't have to use our app. You could just connect it to the HomeKit app and then control other aspects of your home. So you could create a cool scene that controls the lighting, the heating, the cooling, as well as the shades. You could create a scene like movie night and the shades go down, the lights dim, TV turns on, things like that. Wow. All done through the HomeKit app. So yes, there are third-party integrations that we're working on and we already have that will allow for that.
And then I guess the other thing would be, say right now you're kind of involved with retrofitting, right? And you look at the market with current automated shades and you found that they're really expensive. Are there alternatives to where like maybe you're creating a product? Are there other options to where you don't need to retrofit it, but where you can buy these automated shades, but at a much lower cost? Is that something also that's kind of out there?
Yes and no. So if you buy a brand new window shade and you wanted to get them automated, that's going to be more expensive. Mm-hmm. By far. So we don't target new construction. We don't target new builds. We really just target the homeowners that already have beautiful window shades installed, customized, and they don't want to go through the hassle of replacing their shades, uninstalling them, and then reinstalling new ones. Because if they do hire someone for that, it's going to cost another arm and a leg, and they don't want to do it themselves. It might be a hassle. So we try to be that path of least resistance where they could just retrofit on the existing shades. But yes, if you look in the marketplace and you want to look for new shades, there are other motorized shade solutions out there. The smaller sizes would be about the same price as ours, maybe $200-$300. But once you get larger in size, it's going to be very expensive. You're talking about $1,000 a window. So the biggest driver for any motorized shade is the actual fabric.
What do you mean by the actual fabric?
So the cost drivers for a window shade is obviously the size.
Yeah.
And the larger the window shade, the more fabric you need. So that's what I mean by the fabric, right? So more fabric means more cost. And there's different type of fabrics out there. There's obviously high-end fabrics that cost more and then low-end fabrics that cost less. So the fabric is actually one of the largest drivers for the cost of the actual shade. And then you have the aspect of motorization adds another arm and a leg.
Yeah. The motorization, so like the motorization, obviously the motor's built in. And I guess that would have some sort of chip that would connect to, like you said, maybe Ethernet or something like that to where you can control it. So all that's already kind of built in to the shade, right?
Traditionally, no, actually. The motor only will respond to remote control. And then if you want to connect it to an app, then you have to buy another bridge or whatnot. But typically when you buy motorized shades, it's motorized. And if you want it automated, you have to buy an additional component or additional accessory, which is like another bridge. But even when you buy those type of bridges and hubs, they're extremely expensive, another $200-$300 on top, where our bridge is only $69.
Wow. Okay. Good stuff. One thing that I think about when I think about like this home ecosystem, and maybe you could talk a little bit about it, is the risks involved. And I remember maybe about a year or two ago, it was out there in the news, like people were like hijacking people's like indoor like cameras inside their homes,
Yep,
and,
yep,
and
I've
being
heard
able
about that.
to speak to them through there. And I'm wondering, even, obviously you're not dealing with that, right? You're not dealing with cameras. You're dealing with shades. So you can't, I mean, silly, right? But you can't talk through them. You can't really do
Yeah.
much. But what are the risks? Like, can somebody like hack into a system and then mess with people's blinds? I mean, is that, or like maybe like a commercial building and do the same thing,
We are an end node product. So at the end of the day, we're not like the central brains of the system. Like the security camera systems are usually the central controller, and they pose the largest risks. Security cameras and door locks, because you don't want anybody to have access to your door locks and access to your home. As you mentioned, window shades are so low risk. There's no benefit in hacking into window shades. And I think they wouldn't be hacking into the window shades. They'll be hacking into your internet provider. They'll be hacking into your cameras. They'll be hacking into your door locks. They wouldn't be hacking into the shades themselves, but it'd be through your internet provider. So that is the risk itself. But that's a risk that you handle on your IP side.
Gotcha. So yeah. So in that situation, it's like they break into your internet. Them messing with your blinds would probably be kind of low down there on their priorities if they decide to.
Yeah, I don't think. I think there's more important things to do than hijack someone's window shades. But we use AWS, so it's highly secured as it is. And if someone's able to hack that, then I think Amazon will have more things to worry about.
So you're growing the product. You're growing. You have I don't know if you could talk to that a little bit, like kind of like where you are right now, how you are in terms of distribution, where people can find your product. Let's talk about that actually first. Like, So somebody's listening to the podcast, they want to know where they can get this product because, hey, this sounds very convenient. How are they available for purchase?
Yeah, so they could go to HelloRySE.com, our e-commerce store, and just buy directly there. They could go to Amazon.com, BedBathAndBeyond.com. We're onboarding with a bunch of other retailers as well, both physical and online. And when we do launch, we'll make that announcement. But those are the e-commerce portals right now. And we're also hammering out like B2B partnerships with large real estate developers and landlords as well for large scale distribution scale. But anybody online that's just watching this, definitely hit up HelloRySE.com. You'll learn a lot more about the product.
Wow. So it's already good. Cool. You have like other distributors. You're on Amazon. That's really great. Now, in terms of like building the product, right? What's been the biggest kind of misconception about your product? What's something that maybe has been a barrier, or is it just a matter of getting more people to learn about it?
So right now it's more about awareness. So we're developing that awareness. We're building the marketing campaigns and the advertising campaigns just to build that awareness so people understand this product exists. A lot of people don't know this product exists. So similar to the Ring doorbell or the Nest thermostat when they first launched, a lot of people didn't know they existed. So for us right now, it's really just building that awareness so we could scale sales. One thing that's unique about our product is that it will only work with anything with a beaded chain or cord loop. So anything with a loop. That's about 1/3 of the window types in the residential market. It's over 90% in the commercial market, but it is about 1/3 in the residential market. But our vision as a company is to create a lot of different products in the window covering space. So our vision is to really focus on this one category of smart window coverings. And that encompasses everything from blinds to shutters to cordless blinds and shutters, things that tilt, even curtains and drapes. So we will be launching additional products in this space, targeting those type of window coverings. In fact, by the end of the year, we'll have a smart curtain product. Anything that runs on a rod or a rail, side to side, we'll be able to automate that as well. So
there's so many different ones that run side to side. Can you give me an idea of like how you could retrofit something like that? Is that,
Yeah, so if you have a curtain, they typically run on a rod. You put the curtain, and then you have the fabric that runs on the rod with the rings. Our device would actually just sit on that rod and actually control and slide back and forth.
Wow. Yeah. Cool. Yeah, that is. All right. So that's one aspect of the company, or you're trying to distribute the product, get more awareness out there. The second thing I'm very caught my attention quite a bit was, you're looking for investors.
Yes.
And then you're kind of like wondering, hey, give us a call so you can find out more about how to invest. And I'm wondering like at what stage you're in terms of like doing that. Is it sort of like your seed round, your pre-seed round? There's so many different names for these things. And kind of what you're looking to do, with that.
Yep. So we're doing our Series A.
Okay.
And we're raising via Regulation A+, which allows us to raise from any investors around the world, both accredited and retail. So this gives retail investors the power to invest in a lot of these private placement deals that they wouldn't be able to invest in, 10 years ago. So, imagine you're able to invest in the Ubers, the Airbnbs, the Nest, the Rings way back when as a retail investor. That wasn't available. But now with Regulation A+, you are able to invest in these early stage startups. So it is our Series A round. We're trying to raise $25 million. It's priced at $1 a share, and the minimum investment is $1,000 US. So very affordable. Definitely something that a lot of our retail investors are interested in. And they can invest directly online through our website, invest.hellorise.com. They'll be able to review our business plan there, reach out for any questions. We have a direct phone number they could call in to talk to our team, learn about the business, and invest directly online through the online portal.
Do you mind talking about that a little bit? Like, what is it like to raise funds? What is it like to go through that whole process? In terms of like the challenges, kind of like the excitement that happens when you get a big deal come through, even pitching your product. Like, what is that whole kind of process like? Especially with you being the CEO, being the face of the company.
Yeah, so it's very interesting. Traditionally, when you're raising through Reg D or a private placement, you're doing a lot of angel pitches at events. You're doing a lot of meetings with VCs, institutional investors, and whatnot. This is very interesting. It's kind of like the birth of e-commerce, when e-commerce allows you to market online and sell 24/7 online. This is the very same, where you can market online, sell your shares directly online 24/7. So we basically have a website dedicated to educating investors on our company and the offering, and they can do everything online. We use a platform called Dealmaker, which allows you to transact and buy the shares directly online. It's an SEC qualified raise, so everything is very highly regulated. An investor will go online, they fill in their personal information. Our broker dealer will do the KYC, AML checks, and then the investor will fund either with credit card, wire, or ACH. So that's also a very unique thing. You just buy shares with your credit card. But again, everything's done online. It's a very interesting process. And I think the best thing is that it's 24/7, just like e-commerce.
Yeah, 24/7. Yeah. And I'm kind of curious about like the VCs, right? The angel investors as well. I see you got a bunch of numbers in the back in that board back there. And I'm wondering, how rigorous it is for you to kind of be on top of like your numbers, your information that you give out to your investors. We talked about a lot about, a couple of podcasts where we talk about due diligence, right? And I'm kind of wondering, how that process is when someone's like really asking a bunch of questions and how much on top of your game you got to be.
Yeah, so everything is public information. They go on our website, they could see our reports, learn about the business that way. They could call us and talk to our IR team, and they'll be able to answer any questions they want about the business, the revenues. All of that is actually public information, so they could definitely learn more about it. Any questions they have, they could, again, email in or just call us, and we'll be able to answer it. And we do, like an investor that invests, we do provide quarterly reports every quarter, provide them with a report of how we're progressing, new products, new partnerships, all of that. So we are. It's not one of those things where you just invest and forget about us. It is, you're at the early stage. You're supporting a startup, with a lot of big potential, and you're constantly updated on what we're doing.
Yeah, and I kind of like last thing you said, a lot of potential. But you basically said that right now, 5% of the market is being touched by automated shades, right? And I'm wondering how big of a market you see this potentially being.
Oh, I think it's going to be billions. The largest player in our space, or the father of motorized shades, the company that invented motorized shades, it's the type of motors. It's called a tubular motor. It's shaped like a cylinder tube. It fits inside the actual tubes of a roller shade, and it rotates to lift and lower. The inventor, Somfy, publicly traded on the French exchange. At one point earlier this year, a $6 billion market cap. They generate $1.5 billion in annual revenue, servicing that 5% of the market. So, if you're doing the math, we're talking to the other 95% with a much more affordable market. And so I do think this is a $1 billion opportunity. But again, this is my thoughts. This is why I started the company. I think it just makes sense. You know what I mean? There's no other retrofit products out there, and the traditional solutions are just too expensive. Yeah. And I guess when we speak about that, like in my mind, like the residential market's huge, but then when you're talking about retrofitting thousands of commercial spaces, then that's, like I said, like that's huge. Like you're not just dealing with a handful of windows in a home. You're dealing with thousands of windows in one building, and you could multiply that by however many times. You kind of see the potential there. Exactly. So I think with us, the residential market is hot. Multifamily is big. Hotels, commercial office. Another big market is actually the aging population. So senior housing retirement homes. The population is aging, and I think we provide a direct value to this audience, mainly because a lot of these our grandparents and whatnot, they have trouble lifting up the shades, or they might not be able to reach it. So we do provide that benefit where they could just automate it with the press of a button with their voice and just control the shades that way.
Yeah. Well, Trung, thank you so much for spending time with us. Last thing, kind of like, where should people follow you? If they want to interact with you on social media or on the website, what else can they do?
Yeah, so they can find us on Instagram, Facebook, or LinkedIn. Just search up Hello RYSE, and they'll be able to find us, no problem. And again, if they're interested in the private placement Regulation A+ offering, check out invest.helloryse.com.
Awesome. And quick thing, you have videos too, right, to show kind of how to demonstrate how it works and stuff?
Yeah, for sure. So when they go to our website, for sure they'll see how it works. We have videos of both the existing product as well as some of the new products we're developing.
Trung, thank you so much. Trung, CEO of RYSE. Best of luck. Awesome product. Great speaking to you.
Thanks, man. Take care.
I hope you enjoyed this episode. I have to admit that window shades aren't the first things that come to mind when discussing investments, but Trung seems to have a great grasp on the industry and an understanding of what it can become. We'll post some links on the podcast if you're interested in learning more or investing in RYSE. A big thanks to Trung for joining the podcast, and a big thanks to you for joining me today. Until the next time, take care.